My name is Brianna Hayes. I'm 27 years old, and I'm going to tell you about the night my sister texted me a photograph of my bedroom with her clothes on my shelves and her posters on my walls, and how the thing I felt first was not sadness or anger, but a specific kind of recognition, like I had been waiting for this particular move for a long time without knowing it was coming. The text was from Leah. She did not send it to start a fight. She is not a cruel person. She sent it the way people send things when they are happy about something and want to share the happiness and have not fully thought through how the receiving end might experience that sharing. The caption said, "My room is finally big enough for everything," with two heart emojis. I looked at that photograph for a long time. My old room. The one I had grown up in. The one where the window faces the backyard, and you can hear the oak tree knock against the glass when the wind comes from the south. The walls were a different color now, some kind of sage green that I did not choose. My desk was gone. Leah's jewelry stand was in the corner where I used to keep my bookshelf. The whole thing had been repainted and rearranged and claimed so completely that if I had not known the shape of the window from 1,000 mornings, I would not have recognized it as mine. I set my phone down on my kitchen table in Minneapolis, where I had been living for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I had been gone for 22 days, and the room was already someone else's. I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring, and her voice had the particular, careful quality of someone who already knows they are going to need to explain something. My mother started before I could. She said Leah had really needed more space, that the room had been sitting empty, that it just made practical sense. She said it the way people say things when they have already made the decision and are now constructing the justification in real time.
You weren't using it, Brianna. Leah has been in that small room for 2 years, and she needed somewhere she could actually spread out. We thought you'd understand.
I held the phone against my shoulder and looked at my ceiling in Minneapolis, and I breathed for a moment before I responded. I asked if they had planned to tell me. My mother said, of course, they had just gotten busy with the repainting and it all happened fast. I asked if they had gone through my boxes. She said they had moved everything to the garage. Everything to the garage. That sentence did two things. It told me they had not thrown anything away, which was something. And it told me that in the process of moving everything to the garage, they had likely separated the binder from the boxes without realizing what was in it, because I had taken the binder with me to Minneapolis. I had not told them I took it. I had not thought to mention it because I had been the one managing everything in it for 4 years, and it had not occurred to me that its absence would matter until it did. I told my mother it was fine. I said we would talk later. I hung up and I sat with this for a while, and what I thought about was not the room or the sage green paint or Leah's jewelry stand. I thought about a brown 3-ring binder currently sitting on the shelf above my desk in Minneapolis with 4 years of my father's business insurance documentation inside it, and my name on page 1 as the authorized representative for any and all claims. Before I tell you what that binder eventually meant, please subscribe and drop your city and local time in the comments. I read every one. Now let me tell you who I am and why that binder existed at all. Because neither of those things happened by accident. My father, Victor Hayes, has run a lawn care and landscaping business in Columbus, Ohio since I was 9 years old. He started it with 1 truck, 1 trailer, and 4 residential clients who were friends of the family. By the time I finished high school, he had 8 commercial accounts, 3 full-time employees, and a reputation in the east side of Columbus that had taken 15 years to build and which he was rightly proud of. He is a man who knows exactly how to make a commercial property look like it matters. He does not know how to file an insurance claim, reconcile a business bank account, or write a professional response to a client complaint. He has never known how to do those things, and he has always known that about himself, which is one of his better qualities. He is a man without pretense about his own limitations. What he had for 4 years after I graduated college and moved back home to save money was me. I started managing the administrative side of his business in the first summer after I came back, not because anyone asked me to, but because I came home one evening and found him sitting at the kitchen table with an insurance renewal notice and a confused expression that told me he had been looking at it for a while and understood almost none of it. I sat down and went through it with him. We reorganized his filing system that same night. By the end of the weekend, I had set up a simple accounting spreadsheet, created a client contact list, and called the insurance company to clarify two provisions he had been paying for without understanding.
I have been renewing this policy every year for 11 years, and nobody ever explained it to me the way you just did in 20 minutes. Where did you learn how to read these things?
He said that sitting at the kitchen table, looking genuinely surprised and genuinely grateful in equal measure. My father is not a complicated man. When he is grateful, it shows on his face without any effort. I told him I had taken a business administration course in college, and that the rest of it was just paying attention. He nodded and said maybe we should have you handle this stuff going forward, and neither of us treated that sentence as the beginning of a 4-year arrangement. It just became one. Over the following years, I organized his entire business operation from the administrative side, client contracts, equipment warranties, employee scheduling documentation, tax records, and most significantly, the business's commercial liability insurance policy I had restructured in the second year to better cover the type of work his crew was actually doing, because the original policy had gaps I had identified when reading through the fine print. When I restructured the policy, I became the authorized representative on the account. Not because I tried to take anything over, because the insurance company required a consistent point of contact for billing and claims, and I was the one making all the calls.
Dad, I'm going to put myself as the authorized contact on this account so they stop sending things to your old email that you never check. Is that okay with you?
I asked him that one afternoon in the second year, casually, in the way you ask about something that seems like a small, administrative detail. He nodded and said yes without really registering the full weight of what it meant. And why would he? It was a checkbox on an insurance form. It was not supposed to matter. It mattered 3 years later, on a Thursday afternoon in October, when a former client called and used the word lawsuit. Growing up, Leah and I were not in competition. That is the most honest way to start this part. Leah is 4 years younger than me, which meant that, for most of childhood, we were in different enough phases of life that direct comparison felt awkward to everyone. She was in middle school when I was finishing high school. She was starting high school when I was in college. We grew up in the same house and had the same parents, but we passed through it at different speeds and on different schedules, and we never quite occupied the same moment long enough to be directly measured against each other. What we were measured against was a family that organized itself around proximity, around being in the room, physically and consistently, in the way that my parents, who had both grown up in large, close-knit households where Sunday dinners were not optional, and showing up was how you demonstrated belonging, had come to treat as the primary evidence of love. My mother is a woman who believes deeply in presence, not metaphorically, literally. She believes that the people who keep showing up for the small things are the ones who can be trusted with the large ones. She grew up in a family where the relatives who came to everything were the ones who mattered most, and she had carried that belief into her own home without ever fully examining whether it was the only way to measure caring. My father was the same, though he expressed it differently. He expressed it through work, through the thing he had built with his hands and his crew and his 15-year reputation, and through the people who helped him with that work. For 4 years, that person was me. But my helping was indoors and invisible. It happened at a desk, in spreadsheets, on phone calls with insurance adjusters. It did not happen at the backyard barbecues or the Saturday grocery trips or the Sunday dinners. It happened in the margins of family life, which is where I had always operated, and the margins are easier to overlook than the center. Leah was in the center, not because she took it from me, because she was there consistently and I was planning to leave eventually, and a person with a planned departure date occupies a different kind of space than a person who simply belongs.
Leah is just easier right now, Brianna. She doesn't have one foot out the door. It's not a criticism of you. It's just different.
My mother said that to me once, in the kitchen after a conversation about holidays where I had mentioned I could not take much time off from work. She said it with genuine warmth and no intention to wound. It wounded anyway. Not because she was factually wrong. Because the word easier, applied to a daughter in comparison to another daughter, carries something underneath it that a mother may not hear in herself when she says it. It carries the implication that the one who is easier is more welcome, and the one who is more complicated is more conditional. I did not say that. I nodded and went back to whatever I had been doing. I kept managing the business files. I kept making the insurance calls. I kept being the person who built systems that worked and documented processes that nobody else understood and maintained relationships with vendors and adjusters and clients. I kept being capable and competent and useful. I kept being in the room where the room was, the desk in my bedroom, not the kitchen table.
I want you to know that I see how much you do for your dad's business. I know it's a lot. And I know I don't always say it out loud.
My mother said that to me in the third year, on a Sunday evening when it was just the two of us doing the dishes. She meant it completely. She was capable of seeing it and saying it in a quiet moment. She was less capable of letting the seeing change the structure of the family's understanding of who I was inside it. I told her it was fine and that I was glad I could help. Both of those things were true. And then I dried the last dish and went back to my room and worked on the insurance renewal that was due the following week. I moved to Minneapolis in September. The job was a real step forward. A management role at a mid-sized logistics company that paid 30% more than anything I had been offered in Columbus, and that put me in charge of a team for the first time. I had been working towards something like this since I finished my degree, and when the offer came, I spent 2 weeks in July carefully going through the business files before I accepted, making sure I could transition what I managed before I left. I am going to be completely honest about that transition period because it matters for understanding what went wrong later. I spent 3 full weekends going through my father's files. I reorganized every cabinet. I updated every client record. I created a document I called the reference guide that walked through every system, the insurance, the payroll, the client billing, the vendor contacts, and plain language with step-by-step instructions. I printed it in large font because my father does not love small print. I laminated it and put it in a red folder on his desk and walked him through it twice. I called the accounting software company and set up a secondary user account under my father's email. I called the equipment warranty service and updated the contact information. I reached out to 3 of the long-term clients by email to introduce my father as the new primary contact for their accounts. I did everything I could think of, and I genuinely believed I had covered it.
Dad, I have put everything you will ever need in this red folder. If something comes up and you can't figure it out from the folder, you call me first, and I will walk you through it, okay?
I said that to him on a Thursday evening, 2 weeks before my move date, sitting at the kitchen table with the red folder open between us. He looked at it with the expression of a man who respects organization but finds comfort in the person who does the organizing rather than in the documents themselves. He said okay. He said he would call. He said he was going to miss having me here. What neither of us said was that I had built a system around myself rather than independent of myself. I was so embedded in every process that a reference guide describing those processes was not the same as a system that could run without me. The guide told him where things were. It did not tell him what to do when the insurance company's authorization wall came up, because the authorization wall was something I had never thought to anticipate, because I had never imagined being on the other side of it.
I have all the business insurance documents organized in a binder. I'm going to take it with me since my name is on the account, but I'll scan everything and set up a shared folder so you have digital access to all of it.
I told my mother this on my last Sunday evening at home. She nodded and said that sounded very organized. I set up the shared folder on my laptop, uploaded scans of the key documents, and shared it with my father's email. What I did not do was confirm that he had opened the folder, confirmed the contents, tested his ability to access it, or understood what the word authorization meant in the context of an insurance policy. I handed him a digital folder the same way I had handed him the red reference guide, with complete confidence that the giving was the same as the preparing. It was not the same. I drove to Minneapolis on a Tuesday morning. The drive was 8 hours. My mother cried in the driveway. My father hugged me hard and said, "Call when you get there." I called when I got there. I unpacked my apartment and hung my curtains and put the brown binder on the shelf above my desk and started my new job on Monday. 3 weeks later, Leah texted me the photograph. Let me tell you more specifically what was in that binder, because the binder is the whole story. Understanding what was inside it is what makes everything that happened in October make sense. The binder had a divider system with labeled tabs. I had set it up in the second year when I realized that the original shoebox method my father had been using, which involved putting insurance papers in a shoebox on the top shelf of the hallway closet and hoping they were still there when needed, was going to create problems. Tab 1. Policy Declarations. This is the document that tells you in plain terms what the insurance actually covers. Policy limits, coverage types, effective dates, the named insured. My father's name on the primary insured line. My name on the authorized representative line, with my phone number and my email address. This is the document the insurance company references first when you call them. Tab 2. The full policy document. 42 pages. I had gone through all 42 pages in the first year and highlighted every provision relevant to landscaping and lawn care work. The liability sections, the property damage provisions, the exclusions. I wrote margin notes in the sections that had been confusing during the fence damage, claimed the one that happened before I started managing things, so that if that type of situation arose again, we would not spend months confused about what the policy covered. Tab 3. Claims History. 2 claims in 11 years, with full documentation for each. The second one, the fence claim, had taught me what not to do. I had written a 2-page summary of the lessons from that claim at the front of the tab, because I wanted my father to have the institutional knowledge even if the adjuster who had handled it changed. Tab 4. Renewal Correspondence. Every annual renewal package, with my summary notes at the front of each year's section. What changed? What stayed the same? What I had negotiated or questioned. Tab 5. Authorization Form. 1 page. My signature, my contact information, the policy number, the form that told the insurance company I was the person authorized to discuss, modify, and initiate claims on this policy. All of this was in Minneapolis. All of it had left Columbus with me 3 weeks before the Thursday in October when my father called me about the irrigation lawsuit.
Brianna, I need to talk to you about something. A commercial client is threatening legal action. They're saying our crew damaged their irrigation system, and they want $11,000.
He called me at 4 in the afternoon on a Thursday. I was at my desk in Minneapolis finishing a logistics report when my phone lit up with his name, and something about the mid-afternoon timing told me before I answered that this was not a regular call. His voice had the controlled quality of a man trying not to escalate a situation while still communicating that the situation was serious. I had heard that voice once before the fence claim and I recognized it immediately. I closed the logistics report. I told him to tell me everything. The situation was this. A property management company that had been a client for 6 years was claiming that my father's crew had destroyed an underground irrigation system during a fall aeration job. The damage estimate they had obtained from a contractor was $11,000. They had sent a formal letter, via certified mail, stating that if the matter was not resolved within 30 days, they would pursue litigation. My father's crew disputed everything. The lead on the job had been with my father for 8 years and had documented the work carefully, including a notation that the irrigation system on the east side of the property had shown visible signs of pre-existing deterioration before the crew touched anything. He was confident the aeration equipment had not gone deep enough to cause the type of damage being described. The problem was that confidence and documentation are 2 different things in an insurance context, and the bridge between them is a claim.
I called the insurance company like you always told me to do first, before responding to anything. But they said they need the authorized representative to initiate the claim. Who did you put as the authorized person when you set that up?
He asked that question carefully. He was already doing the math while he was asking it, and the math was landing in a way he did not love. I told him it was me. I explained what authorized representative meant on an insurance policy, that the company would only discuss the account with named individuals, that no one else could initiate a claim or receive information about the policy status without written authorization from an authorized rep. I told him everything was in the binder. There was a pause on his end, the specific pause of someone arriving at an understanding they wish they had arrived at earlier.
So they won't talk to your mother or to me without you, and the binder with everything we need is up in Minneapolis? Is that right?
He said it without anger. Just a flat, precise comprehension of a man who has run a business for 15 years and understands what it means when a critical piece of information is in the wrong location. I told him yes, that was right. And then I told him that I was going to call the insurance company first thing the following morning, initiate the claim myself, and handle the authorization piece so he did not have to worry about it. I told him to text me a photograph of the formal letter from the property manager and everything his crew lead had documented about the job. He said, okay. He said, thank you. He said he was sorry to bother me with this. That last sentence is the one I have thought about the most. He was sorry to bother me. A situation that my organizational choices had made more complicated by keeping the authorization in my name, by not transferring it before I left, by not thinking far enough ahead, and he was sorry to bother me with it. That is the kind of man my father is. That is also the kind of thing that tells you how a family has been operating for a very long time. I need to stop here because I know what is running through your mind right now, and I want to address it honestly. You might be thinking, why was all of this still in Brianna's name after she left? Why hadn't she transferred the authorization before she moved? Why had she taken the binder at all? All fair questions. The honest answer to all three is the same. I had not thought that far ahead, and that is on me. I was good at managing the business files. I was not good at building the system so it could run without me. I had been the system. The files were the files because I had made them. The authorization was mine because I had established it. The insurance company called me because I was the one who answered. I had never asked whether any of it would function if I was no longer in Columbus, because for 4 years I had not been planning to be anywhere else. When I left for Minneapolis, I handed my father a red folder with a reference guide, and I thought that was enough. It wasn't. The reference guide told him where things were, but it could not tell him how to access an account that required my authorization. It could not make the insurance company talk to him. It could not replace what I had built without documenting how I had built it.
I keep telling myself that I thought I had covered everything before I left. But the truth is, I never really thought about what happens when you're not the one holding everything together anymore.
I said that to my friend Sasha in Minneapolis, a few days after the call with my father. She listened, and then she said something that stayed with me.
It sounds like you were so focused on leaving well that you didn't think about what you were leaving behind. There's a difference.
She was right. Leaving well and leaving prepared are two different things. I had done the first. The second was what I had missed. I sat with that for a day. Then I called the insurance company, initiated the claim, and got to work. The insurance claim process took 8 weeks from initiation to resolution. I managed it from Minneapolis the same way I had always managed the business, through disciplined communication, organized documentation, and the specific patience required when bureaucratic processes move slower than the pressure around them. On the first morning after my father's call, I called the insurance company at 8:15. I had the policy number ready, my authorization reference number ready, and a clear description of the situation ready. The claims department connected me with an adjuster named Linda within 20 minutes. I explained the situation, the formal letter, the crew lead's account, and the documentation I had from the job. Linda asked me to send the formal letter and any written account from the crew lead within 48 hours. I told her I would send it within 12. I called my father and told him to photograph every page of the formal letter immediately and text it to me. He did it within 4 minutes. I could tell from his speed that he had been sitting by his phone since the previous evening. I called the crew lead directly. His name was Marcus. He had been with my father for 8 years, through 2 crew expansions and the fence claim and every difficult client the business had ever had. I asked him to write out a full account of the aeration job in his own words, as specifically as he could remember, and to include the notation about the pre-existing deterioration of the irrigation system. I told him to be precise about the equipment settings, the areas covered, and what he observed at the end of the job. He sent me 4 handwritten pages by that same evening. My father photographed them and sent them over.
Brianna, I want you to know that I have been running this business for 15 years, and I have never had someone handle something like this for me remotely. What you are doing right now, the way you are organizing all of this, It's not nothing.
Marcus said that to me on the phone the evening he sent his written account. He said it quietly, with the directness of a man who does not waste words on things he doesn't mean. He had watched me work on the business for 4 years. He knew what it looked like. I told him his documentation was the most important part of this whole case. He had done the real work by keeping the daily log. All the love was doing was making sure it ended up in the right hands in the right format. The key piece was the daily log Marcus had kept on the day of the aeration job. He had been keeping these logs on my instructions since the second year, a habit I had introduced specifically because of the fence damage claim from the 9th year, where the absence of contemporaneous documentation had made an 8-week process out of what should have been a 2-week one. The log from the September job included his equipment settings, the areas of the property worked, the time he had arrived and departed, and a clear notation about the condition of the irrigation system's east side before the crew began work. I sent everything to Linda within the deadline. She reviewed the documentation and arranged an independent inspection of the irrigation system. The inspector's report confirmed that the damage was consistent with long-term material deterioration rather than mechanical impact from irrigation equipment. The damage pattern was not consistent with the type of equipment Victor's crew used. The insurance company denied the property manager's claim. My father did not owe $11,000. The property management company, upon receiving the denial letter and the independent inspection report, dropped the matter entirely. They renewed their contract for the following season.
Brianna, the adjuster called this morning. They denied the claim. The client is backing off. I don't know how to say thank you for this in a way that actually covers it.
My father called me on the morning the decision came through. His voice had the quality it gets when he is genuinely moved and is working to stay in control of it. He is not a demonstrative man, my father. When something gets through, it shows in the particular steadiness he uses to cover it. I told him I was genuinely glad it worked out and that the crew lead's documentation had been the most important piece of the whole case. He said he knew. He said he was going to start making sure Marcus's logs were filed properly going forward. Then he was quiet for a moment, and he said the thing I was not expecting.
I've been thinking for the last 8 weeks about why this was harder than it needed to be, and the honest answer is that we relied on you for years without understanding what we were actually relying on. I don't think that's fair to you, and I wanted to say that.
He said it plainly, the way he says most things that have cost him something to arrive at, without build-up, without explanation. Just the fact of it, offered simply. I sat with it. Then I told him that I should have built the system so it could run without me before I left. He said both things were true. That is probably the most honest conversation my father and I have ever had, and it lasted approximately 45 seconds. The conversation that happened between my mother and me was different from the one with my father, and it needed to be different, because the room was a separate thing from the business files. I called her on a Sunday, 3 weeks after the insurance matter was resolved. I had been thinking about what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it, and I had landed on honest and simple, which is usually the right approach when the alternative is either performing forgiveness or nursing resentment until it calcifies. I told her that giving my room to Leah without asking me first had hurt, not the practical reality of it. I was not coming back to live in it. The fact of how it happened. The 3 weeks. The photograph from Leah. Finding out through a text with heart emojis.
I know we should have called you before we did it. I think we told ourselves that since you weren't coming back to use it, it didn't need to feel like a big conversation. And we were wrong about that.
She said that quietly and without defensiveness, which told me she had been thinking about it too. My mother does not apologize easily, but she does apologize genuinely, and genuine is the more important half. I told her I understood the practical logic. I told her the part that had mattered was not the room itself, but what the 3 weeks said, that in their minds I had already left so completely that the room could be redistributed, and my opinion did not need to be part of the conversation. That is what had landed hardest. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said what she said, and I have thought about it many times since.
You left so completely because you had to. Because this family didn't make room for you to stay halfway. And I think that's something I need to sit with for a while.
I did not argue with her. I did not tell her she was wrong or she was right. I just let it sit there between us, which is sometimes what an honest thing needs. We talked for another hour after that. Not about the room or the business, about what the family looked like from her vantage point and from mine, and how different those two pictures were while being pictures of the same thing. It was the longest real conversation we had ever had, and it left me feeling tired in the way that means something actually happened rather than just words being exchanged. My father changed the authorized representative on the insurance policy to himself within 2 weeks of the claim being resolved. I helped him do it. I walked him through the form, explained what it meant, made sure he understood that he would now be the one the insurance company called when anything happened. He also hired a part-time office manager, a woman named Deborah who comes in twice a week and handles the administrative side of the business, the filing, the client correspondence, the insurance renewals. He pays her properly. She knows what she is doing. I gave her a transition call that lasted 2 hours, walked her through every system I had built, answered every question. The brown binder is still in Minneapolis. My father does not need it anymore because everything in it has been transferred to the new system that Deborah manages. But I have not thrown it away either, and I am not sure I will.
Sasha asked me once why I still keep the binder when it's not useful anymore. I told her I think I keep it because it was 4 years of something I built that actually worked, and I'm not ready to let go of the proof of that.
I keep it on the same shelf, above my desk, next to the book I still haven't finished. The room in Columbus is still sage green. Leah has put her own things in it and made it genuinely hers over the months since the repainting, and that is right. It is her room now in every sense that matters. I have not been back to Columbus since Minneapolis, not because I am punishing anyone, because I am building my life here, in the specific, unhurried way of someone who has finally arrived in a place that has room for her without requiring her to manage something first.
My mother started calling me every Sunday morning. Not to report news or coordinate logistics, just to talk. It started about a month after our real conversation, and she hasn't stopped.
I told Sasha that, and she said, "That's what it looks like when someone decides to make more. Space for you." I said I thought she was right. My father texts me when his crew lands a new commercial account. He texts me the client name and the size of the property and always the same sign-off. Couldn't have done it without the foundation you built. I don't know if he knows how much I needed to hear that. I suspect he does, which is why he keeps saying it. My name is Brianna Hayes. I am 27 years old. I live in Minneapolis now, in an apartment where I keep a brown binder on a shelf that I no longer technically need. I spent 4 years being the person who held things together quietly and left without asking for recognition, and was told in a dozen small ways that my departure would be seamless, because the family had already built the shape of their life around the people who stayed. They gave my room away in 3 weeks. They thought that settled something. What they did not realize was that I still had the one thing they needed when the crisis arrived. Not because I planned it that way. Because when you are the person who holds something for long enough, the thing becomes part of you and you take it with you when you go. The insurance company asked for the authorized representative. That was still me. And in that moment, the family understood something about my absence that 3 weeks and a can of sage green paint had not been able to say. Some things you only understand when you need them, and they are not there. I was there. I am always there when it matters. That is the kind of person I am. I did not need a room in Columbus to be that person. I needed the shelf in Minneapolis and the patience to wait until the moment made itself clear. It did. Before you go, I have one question for you. Have you ever been the person who quietly held something together for someone else and then had to watch them realize it only after you stopped? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. If this story stayed with you today, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you are here for the next story. I will see you then.